What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Blerd Out. Today we got the new One Piece chapter 11,006, and we're going to be talking about the dangers in my heart and kind of comedy, romance, anime series in general. Of course, if you haven't caught up to the latest chapter, if you haven't watched the latest episodes, please be warned, there are spoilers ahead.
Oops! Spoilers.
Now, the cover story for this week's chapter is Robin dressing up a crocodile, which is just, funny. She used to work for Crocodile, now she's dressing this one up. But also, it's Robin. We love to see Robin in any kind of form, so this is a good cover story. The chapter kicks off with the later to be revealed giant pirates heading towards Egghead. And they're talking about how they're really going at it, and it's just like in the newspaper. Now, I don't really recall how long we've been in Egghead in story, but I didn't feel like it was that long. I felt like this was kind of, in a progression of maybe 1-2 days. But it's really fast for the newspaper to get that information out that everything that's going down on Egghead, if that's what they're responding to. Of course, it could also be something like the newspaper saying that Luffy's headed to Egghead and there will be some complications there just because he's going there. I'm not entirely sure. Now, I mentioned before the return of Gear 5 Luffy is going to be imminent, and we get it back this chapter. He's done eating, digests his food, goes right back into Gear 5. Now, we still don't really know how he got over here in this area, because he was basically incapable of moving once he used Gear 5. He was kind of tired out. He got some food, and then moved over here to eat the rest of his food. Now, who did that, we're still not sure. A lot of people are still saying Carbo. I think that's a possibility, but I'm just not sure. It would feel somewhat out of nowhere for him to be here, but I guess also in place for him because he just shows up sometimes. We go over to see, the Marines are still laying it deep on Egghead, shooting cannons non-stop, just trying to obliterate the place. And then we see deeper in, the pacifists are still aiming for Kuma and Bonnie, basically where they were last chapter. Now, in the midst of all this, we have Vegapunk telling Atlas, send Bonnie a message. And when she conveys it, Bonnie goes ahead and asks the pacifista not to shoot and to help them escape instead. And they listen. Basically, Vegapunk went ahead and installed a command where Bonnie is the top brass of all the Kuma clones. Basically, she has the highest power in the hierarchy of who can control the pacifistas, namely the Kuma-based pacifistas, because Vegapunk did not want Bonnie to die at the hands of Kuma, and he didn't want Kuma to be the one that kills Bonnie. So basically, there is no Kuma version of a pacifista that can hurt Bonnie, or I guess that would hurt Bonnie if she commands them not to. It doesn't seem like they react to it natively. It's only on voice command. So she gives the command that pacifists start blowing up the warships. And this was something I was interested about last chapter because I was saying how they really didn't care about the pacifistas still being on the island, even though they were bombarding it. And now they're kind of reaping that because the pacifista are tearing them up from the island and they can't get anywhere past it. And it looks like they're probably gonna stop the Buster Call with this, because the pacifista destroy at least 3 ships in the panel alone, where we see them turn them, and then we see more ships getting destroyed later. So unless they send another fleet of warships to Egghead, we might actually see the island survive, at least for a little bit longer. I mean, we have a whole line of pacifistas, so if we have them fighting on our side, I'm imagining we're going to have to get the Seraphim involved. And I wonder if, I guess probably the Kuma Seraphim is going to have the same reaction. So if Bonnie gives the Kuma Seraphim a command, it should obey her. As far as the others, it's very possible that they don't have that installed in them, but I think the Kuma Seraphim would be one of the stronger ones, especially if it has Kuma's power. Now, as Vegapunk's kind of inner monologuing why he did this, he laments that The choices he made here will have consequences, and he faces that immediately when Saturn stabs him through the chest. Now, Saturn has been really reluctant to just straight up kill. Like, he had Bonnie in his clutches, didn't kill her. Vegapunk's kind of gone against him a few times since he's been here, and he's just been chatting with him. But at this point, he's just like, all right, I'm just gonna stab you. I'm done with this. Even so, I don't think this is death, but I mean, Vegapunk looks pretty wounded. And this isn't even like on the heart side of the chest, it's just the right side, so I'm pretty sure he's gonna be fine. We'll have Chopper put some bandages on it, he'll be good to go. Now, everyone's still falling, and we have Kizaru coming in to land some final blows. What's cool about this is, so we see Sanji fly in there, and he actually ends up deflecting one of the light beams with the Egghead Island shoe. Now, I don't really know if there's hockey involved, if it's just Sanji, if it's the shoe, what's going on here. But it's a cool panel nonetheless. I don't think it really does anything because everyone still gets shot behind him, but it's a good try. And then after using this move, which I believe is named after the Sacred Jewels, I don't recall like the full Japanese name, but I think that's the one Kizaru used. He goes up with Amano Murakumo. And when he does it, Kuma puts out his hand in defense. Now, for the most part, we've kind of seen Kuma just hang on to Bonnie, no matter what's happening. Even when the beams were coming toward him, he just kind of held Bonnie close. But with Kizaru right in his face, he holds his arm out. And I initially thought it was kind of just to block the light coming into his eyes, but I mean, he's a robot at this point. I don't think that would really affect him. And he also does it palm outward. So my thing is that if Kizaru actually managed to swing, would he get deflected or would he cut through Kuma's hand? I would have loved to see that. But instead, Gear 5 Luffy comes in, knocks Kizaru out of the sky. And he does it from some distance too. Like, he's not immediately in the area. He actually sent his arm flying a while away. And after the punch, we kind of get Luffy's entrance with everything turning to rubber and bouncing around. We hear the drums of liberation. And now we're getting the reveal for Bonnie and Kuma that Luffy is Sun God Nika. And I point back to Kuma again because, again, he's not doing what he was normally doing, where he was kind of just sitting. It looks almost like he's recognizing who Nika is. Because we get a panel where Bonnie is tending to Vegapunk, and we see Kuma in the background. And I would think, if anything, he'd be hovering over Bonnie. But you can see he's focused elsewhere, kind of like where Sanji is focused. And we even see a reaction panel of Kuma looking up at Luffy, while Vegapunk kind of explains to Bonnie that Luffy is Sun God Nika. And while Bonnie's observing, we get the Skypiea pose of Luffy in the sky, doing basically like the Gear 5 pose. The one that everyone kind of mimics when they talk about Sun God Nika. And Vegapunk in his explanation even goes to say that a Buster Call is a tame problem for Gear 5, for Sun God Nika. Which is, I think, what a lot of us have been saying all along, is that the Buster Call really just doesn't have that oomph effect anymore. You know, we're not scared of a Buster Call. While they're all admiring Gear 5 Luffy, we see in the background that the robot we kind of got introduced to at the beginning of the arc starts activating again. It's responding to the drums of liberation from Luffy. Now, what this robot will do, I'm not entirely sure. The last time it was activated, it attacked Mary Joy. I don't think there's anybody here it could realistically attack and defeat, but it might go after Saturn since he's the closest thing to Mary Joy. Also, as everyone's admiring Gear 5, we have the giant pirates coming in off the coast. And after the video last week, I was actually talking to someone and they made some sense where they said it wasn't the survivors that attacked the warship, but someone else going to Egghead that attacked the warship before the warship got to the survivors. Which I think makes the most sense there, and that makes most sense here since we have the giant pirates arriving. They definitely didn't send a warship after giants. That would be really stupid because giants are crazy strong. You know, they should have learned from Saul that a couple warships isn't enough. Saul can lift a warship. Just sending one to destroy a boat wouldn't make any sense. So there's no way they just sent the boat for the Giants. The Giants were coming through to Egghead anyway, and they came across that ship. Now, some of the Marines actually didn't think that Giants still existed, which I'm not really sure makes sense. I'm wondering if they think the giant pirates didn't exist anymore, because they have giants in their own ranks. They have a giant squad division in the Marines. So there's no way they're like, giants don't exist anymore. So I think it is the fact that they're like, okay, these specific giants, the giant pirates, Dory and Broggy, I thought they died 100 years ago because they were off, fighting on Little Garden. Now we know that the giants have a link to Shanks, and they were just coming from Elbaf. So this could be something linked to the final meeting between Luffy and Shanks. Now, I don't think we're gonna get this soon. Like, if they go back to Elbaf, I'm guessing that Shanks is not going to be there anymore. But it does look like the giant pirates are here to basically take the Straw Hats off of Egghead, and I doubt there's any place they would go besides Elbaf. And they even refer to him as the Sun God. So they know all about Nika, they know all about Luffy, and it makes me wonder, does Shanks know? Because we have the suspicion that Shanks knew what the original fruit was. That's why he stole it, or at least he was told to steal it because of what the fruit was. So he should, to some degree, have an idea of who Luffy actually is. Whether he knows it in depth or not entirely sure. It being Shanks, I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm wondering if this is all a bigger part of Shanks' plans here. Either way, it felt like a very short chapter. This chapter and the one before felt pretty short as far as content. Nothing I would say incredibly major happened. I think the biggest thing is figuring out who the ship was. It ended up being the giant pirates. I'm curious to see how far they go with Bonnie's control over the Kuma pacifistas. I really want to see her interact with Esper. I think that's going to be the key to the arc. Because if they can't use original Kuma, they have Esper in the same power. And we are on break, so that means agenda piece is about to be real strong. Keep an eye out on Twitter for the greatest agendas. It's going to be amazing. So the anime I've been watching most recently is called Dangers in My Heart. It's a comedy romance about a young boy named Ichikawa and a young girl named Yamada. Now, I've mentioned before, but I am a big fan of comedy romance anime. Like, it's a genre that I really didn't think I'd be interested in. I honestly can't remember the first time I watched a comedy romance and kind of got the feel for it. But the ones that always stick out to me are ones like Toradora or Horimiya. Snafu is probably my favorite. Well, between Snafu and Kaguya-sama. But it's such a good genre to me. Like, I've fallen in love with the tropes, the character archetypes. Like, all of it is just so fascinating. And I mean, I love a good heartfelt anime after watching something like Jujutsu Kaisen or Demon Slayer, where everything's like action-packed and it's usually sad in some degrees. Like, just watching a nice heartwarming anime feels good. And so far, this one's hitting on that same level. Like, I had some reservations in the beginning because the main character Ichikawa, he's got a weird murder thing going on, and I don't know why this is part of his character. Like, I mean, I guess they're trying to make him as the loner, silent kid in school, but like, I feel like they could have done that without making him as excited to talk about murder. And it tones down through the series. Like, I'm only in season 1 of 2 seasons, but the first few episodes, it's kind of like a thing where he talks about murder, and it's just really off-putting for like a junior high student to be talking about that kind of stuff. But as, like I said, the show progresses, he does it less and less. It's a character type that ultimately I get, but I think it's kind of a weird choice. But like I said, that fades away. Yamada, on the other hand, is an absolute sweetheart. She's definitely an airhead, but like she kind of just does her own thing all the time, whether or not it makes sense. And she's a big eater. And so they kind of start off this budding relationship where he hates her and he doesn't want her alive anymore. And so his plan is to try and figure out when he can basically off her, which is why I said it's kind of a crazy plot point to start with. And that fades probably by like episode 2 or episode 3 to the point where they're interacting, but not like friends. They pass by, they spend a lot of time in the library together because that's where he always is and that's where she eats. So they kind of have this every once in a while glance, every once in a while to have a conversation. And that slowly blossoms as each episode goes on to the point where he realizes that, okay, I actually like her. And seeing as it's from Ichikawa's point of view, we kind of get everything that's going through his mind as much as he thinks about her, how she probably thinks about him, at least from his perspective. But what I really enjoy about this is that Yamada isn't kind of just the character that he's interested in. The story also does a lot to prove that she shows interest and that she actually wants to progress the relationship and trying to find out ways to interact with her. It's more honestly ways of her trying to interact with him, and he's so out of it as far as being like socially inept. He doesn't have friends, he doesn't talk to people all the time. So he reads a lot of her interactions as mocking him because she's incredibly popular. She's like the popular pretty girl at school. She's a model. She stars in, movies and stuff. So he sees her interactions as like almost pity. Like, I'm going to be nice to this loner kid. Maybe it'll be fun. But like I said, as the story progresses, they both get closer and they both kind of shed that outer shell. Like, even though she's a bit of an airhead, she seems a lot more put together when she's around Ichikawa. And even though he's like a loner and he's got this really dark mentality, it all lightens up when he's around her. And so far, I like the progression. I really want to see a big leap before this season ends and before the next season starts. One of the things that can kind of get me out of this genre of anime is that it's a repetitive lack of progress. You have two characters interacting consistently, yet they make no progress in furthering their relationship. It's kind of just a back and forth. If you've ever seen... So I would say this falls in between what Takagi-san is and what Kaguya-sama is. If you ever seen those two, if you look at that middle ground between those two, that's where you'd find this show. Because it's not so much as any of them are teasing each other, but they don't have the awareness, the mental awareness to really understand what liking each other means. So they're going back and forth at it, and they're obviously showing hints that I like this person, but they just don't know how to interact. Like I said, Ichikawa sees everything as more of a hit on him than he does actual interest. And then Yamada sees everything he does, but she doesn't know how to interpret it or properly react to it. She still has a somewhat childish mentality, even though she basically operates in the adult world a lot more than anybody else because of her job. So it's a weird juxtaposition. And the more and more you see her character, the more you see that she's a little off, but also when she wants to be, she can be very astute. In fact, if I had to point out some of my favorite parts of the series so far, it's the parts where Yamada is more astute and more paying attention to what's happening with Ichikawa. There are times where she's kind of just goofing off, just having her own conversation, just talking the way she talks. But there are other times where she's actually making moves to show interest. Like when she's asking him for his phone number, or if she's asking like to spend time with him or just be around him. And it's so adorable because you can tell how hard she's trying, but you can also tell how basically new to this she is. Because she's used to interacting with people. She's used to people liking her because, like I said, she's a model and TV star. So she kind of has that air about her where it's not a new thing to have people trying to, ask for a number, trying to date her, things like that. That's not new. But for her to actually like someone else is new territory for her. So the times where she steps out and is vulnerable in that sense, I think, are the really hard-hitting parts of the show. And Ichikawa has his moments too. They tend to flicker back and forth. Because honestly, sometimes he just does things reactionary. Like, he doesn't always think about what he's doing. He'll just see something happen and then it'll just kick on where he reacts, and then he's asking himself from within, like, why am I doing this? I don't fully get what's going on here. And at some point he does internalize and realize that he likes Yamato. Like, he can't deny that any longer. But then he has to get over the hurdle of, is it okay? Does she like me? What is this whole world that I've stepped into? Because in the same way that Yamada has the experience of people being interested in her, he has the experience of many people not being interested in him. I mean, popular girl, really unpopular guy, interested in each other. That's the premise of the story. If it's something you haven't seen and you're interested in it, I would definitely say check it out because, like I said, so far I'm probably 10 episodes in and I'm really enjoying it. I can't wait to get to season 2. I can't wait to see how season 1 ends. And it just makes me love the romance comedy genre more. And the reason I ended up picking up this one is because I saw it had a pretty decent rating on Mal, and I was looking for another kind of comedy romance after I finished Masamune-kun. I like to have them intermittent. Like, I'll watch some action stuff, or I'll watch a different genre, and then I'll jump back into comedy romance. Like before this, I was doing Dark Gathering, which is a horror, and then this to kind of lighten it up. I do plan on being finished with at least season 1 by the time the next ep is out, so I'll probably be talking about the ending of that in the next one. Since we have a One Piece break next week, I plan on doing an episode talking about Hazbin Hotel. The last 2 episodes of the season should drop today, so I'm going to watch those and be ready to talk about it next week. So if you have not watched Hazbin Hotel, please check it out. Other than that, I'll catch y'all on the next one.